Starting off this countdown, we have Finding Nothing. And by this, I'm referring to the Disney Pixar movie Finding Nemo. Theory goes that Nemo is actually dead. Sadly, he didn't survive the attack at the beginning of the film that killed his mother and siblings. The whole movie is actually about a father trying to come to terms with the death of his wife and kids. As a result, Nemo is a figment of his imagination. Now, all the pals that we see along the way are all trying to help Marlin cope with his grief, whereas Dory is said to be his psychiatrist helping him along his journey to acceptance. In fact, the movie shows the 5 stages of grief. First, we have denial, which we can see by Marlin always babying Nemo and not wanting him to go to school. Then we have anger, which was when he got mad at Nemo for swimming out too far. We got bargaining, which was his entire journey across the ocean. Depression, which was when he almost reached Nemo and then he saw him getting flushed down the toilet. And then finally, acceptance, coming to terms with the loss of him. In fact, Nemo in Latin means nobody or nothing. So the name literally translates to finding nobody. Coming in at number 9, we have WALL-E. Aw, WALL-E, he's such a cute little innocent robot. Or is he? Let's take a closer look at him. So the film takes place on a completely destroyed Earth. WALL-E is responsible for cleaning up the waste that covers the Earth. But theory goes that WALL-E is actually responsible for the current state of the world. Theory states that WALL-E actually killed off all of his fellow robot companions and in this battle ended up destroying Earth. That's why WALL-E is the only one standing. He killed off all the other robots. Then he uses parts of the dead robots to keep himself alive. Okay, that just turned the movie into a horror film. Coming in at number 8, we have MOANA. MOANA was the movie of the summer a couple of years ago. Kids loved it, and I can't lie, the songs were pretty catchy. Like, I didn't even know The Rock could sing. Anyways, it may just be that MOANA is pretty much dead for most of the film. So theory goes that when Moana goes on her adventure, she gets killed in the big storm. Since she's no longer living, she can access a magical otherworld. That's where she meets Maui. That's why during her adventure, she doesn't interact with any normal humans, cause she's not alive. And it's also why she sees the spirit of her grandmother and ancestors at the end of the movie as she sails her boat. Cause she did. In our 7th spot, we have the Frozen Shining. One fan is convinced that Frozen was basically inspired by the horror movie The Shining. They argue that there's just too many similarities between the two films. For starters, the main characters in both movies are a danger to their family, Elsa in Frozen and Jack in The Shining. Then we have the fact that both the characters' personalities begin to change after being isolated in a giant building, located in a cold, desolate area. And Elsa at one point in the film literally almost kills her sister. So I'm thinking another Shining needs to be filmed, this time starring Elsa. In our 6th spot, we have Up to Heaven. The Disney Pixar movie Up has one of the saddest beginnings in Disney movie history. It's a real tearjerker. The only thing worse than that might be this theory. So according to this theory, Carl died in his sleep shortly after his wife passed away. The adventure he goes on through the movie is his journey to the afterlife. I mean, he literally is in his balloon house floating up to the sky, aka towards heaven. Russell is his guardian angel trying to make sure that he gets to heaven unharmed. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the CIA agents. Now we will be taking a look at one of my favorite Disney movies, Lilo and Stitch. So in the movie, Lilo's primary caregiver is her sister. What happened to her parents? Well, it said that they died in a car crash. But did that really happen? Reddit user Kapu_KOA thinks not. They think their parents were actually CIA agents. Let's look at the evidence. So in the movie, it's revealed that Cobra Bubbles, the social worker, was once a CIA agent that worked with the Galactic Council. What? So you're telling me that once he was a CIA agent and then out of the blue he was like, actually, you know what? I'd rather become a social worker. No, I think he was friends with Lilo's parents, and when they died on a mission, he was shook and he couldn't go on working without them. Now, let's take a look at Lilo. She's a pretty interesting kid. First off, her selection of books are not suitable for a kid her age. Some of her books include Practical Voodoo, Iowa's Road Maps, and Oyster Farming. Theory goes that those books were her father's, and he had a wide range of topics to read about as research for when he went on undercover assignments. Also, Lilo loves to take photos. She might have been influenced by her father, who would take pictures of his targets. I kinda like this theory. Like, I wouldn't mind a movie where Lilo and Stitch go on a mission with her parents. And at number 4, we have the skinned Sully. All you Monsters Inc. fans, brace yourself for this one. Sully is dead. He has died. So in Monsters Inc., Randall always mentions how bad humans are. At one point, he says that humans skin monsters and make toilet seat covers out of their fur. Sadly, this foreshadowed the fate of our friend Sully. In a Toy Story short called Toy Story Toons Partysaurus Rex, there's a scene where the kid is taking a bubble bath. And lo and behold, on the toilet seat in the bathroom is a fuzzy Sully seat cover. So Randall was right, humans do skin the monsters and turn them into toilet seat covers. Poor Sully, he let his guard down with Boo and ended up getting skinned alive. Coming in at number 3, we have Snow White's drugs. Snow White is another Disney film that may be all about drug use, particularly the use of cocaine. For starters, Snow White is another name for cocaine. Then we have the 7 dwarves like Happy, Grumpy, Sneezy, and Dopey. Would you look at that? Those are all potential side effects of doing cocaine. Then we have Doc. Continual cocaine use will most likely end up with you seeing a doctor. The movie is about cocaine use. Confirmed. In our second spot, we have the deathbed. According to this next theory, Snow White may not have had a happy ever after. So in the film, we see that Snow White is woken up by her true love's kiss. But in reality, the prince is the personification of death. Snow White was laying on her deathbed. The prince's kiss was actually a Dementor's kiss that sucked the last little bit of life out of her, meaning she actually ends up dying at the end of the film. She then wakes up and imagines her perfect ending, riding off with her prince. Notice how she rides off to a castle literally in the clouds? Hello, she's on her way to heaven. And in our number 1 spot, we have KRISTOFF'S wardrobe. I know I touched upon this before, but you guys remember when the movie Frozen was all the rage? There was Frozen themed everything, and endless kids were singing Let It Go. Well, hate to break it to you all die-hard fans out there, but the movie might be darker than that one scene with Anna and Hans. So basically, let's take a look at Kristoff. He's a sweet, handsome guy, right? Well, take a look at his wardrobe. Some fans have pointed out that his outfit looks a lot like reindeer skin. And you know what reindeer we never see in the film? Sven's mom. So theory goes that Sven's mom was killed and skinned and turned into clothes for Kristoff. I mean, they do live in the icy wilderness with limited resources. They probably would kill reindeer for meat and clothes. Looks like Sven's mom wasn't so lucky. Now the theory gets even darker, saying that the reason why Sven and Kristoff have such a close bond is because Sven feels connected to him. He doesn't even realize his best friend is wearing his mom's skin, but he's attracted to him by the comforting smell of her pelt. Okay, whoever made up that theory is messed. Like, that is so dark. Starting off this countdown, we have Alice in Chains. And I'm not talking about the band here. I'm talking about Alice from Alice in Wonderland. Theory goes that the only person in the movie that is actually mad is Alice. And in fact, she is a patient at a mental asylum. She suffers from schizophrenia, and everything we see in the movie is just all one big hallucination. Now, every character that we see is a personification of other conditions that she suffers from. For example, the White Rabbit is her anxiety, the Mad Hatter is her ADHD, and the Queen of Hearts is narcissistic personality disorder. So, Alice is chained up in her room all day hallucinating from the drugs she was given. Moving on to number 9, we have Boo the Brave. So there's a huge theory out there that attempts to prove that all Pixar movies are related in some way. Part of this theory argues that Boo from Monsters Inc. is in fact the witch from Brave. I know it seems wild right now, but just hear me out. So first off, Brave takes place hundreds of years before Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. takes place in the future when humans don't exist anymore. It's theorized that the monsters use the doors to go back in time to a child's house to collect their energy. Meanwhile, in Brave, we see that the witch magically disappears when she goes through doorways. Just like the scarers from Monsters Inc. do. So theory goes that Boo couldn't forget about Sully. She missed him so much that when she grew up, she harnessed magic and figured out how to teleport through doors. She then teleports through these doors in an attempt to stumble across Sully again. So the witch in Brave is Boo, who teleported back in time. Don't believe me? In the witch's workshop, there's a carving of Sully there. How would she carve this if she has never even met him before? Another theory is that all the Easter eggs in every Pixar movie were actually left as a trail by Boo to help Sully find her. Moving on to number 8, we have the pathological liar. Who am I referring to? Cinderella, of course. The story of Cinderella is told from her perspective, but others claim that her stepmother and sisters aren't as sinister as she makes them out to be. In fact, this theory takes a look at it from their perspective. So Cinderella was a young girl from a wealthy family. She was very privileged and never had to do any chores. When her stepmother came into her life, she was trying to teach Cinderella that she can't ride on her privilege and her family's wealth. So she gets her to start helping around the house by doing household chores. But since Cinderella has never done any chores in her entire life, she feels like she's being punished. And she makes everything more dramatic than it actually is. So she acts like she's doing really cruel chores. Then her sisters seem evil since they are living in a house that's rightfully hers. So the whole movie is about Cinderella overreacting to every little thing, simply because she has a poor work ethic. In our 7th spot, we have the AI Cars. Disney Pixar's Cars was another really successful film. Owen Wilson killed it as Lightning McQueen, but Miter has to be my favorite. I just love him. Oh my god, I had to do that. So Cars takes place on an Earth devoid of humans. All that's left are cars that act and experience emotions just like humans. Well, theory goes that Cars takes place several thousand years in the future, and they are highly advanced AI cars. These cars became so smart that they killed their owners and took on the personalities of them. See, this is why we need to stop with AI. Robots are becoming way too smart. They're gonna end up taking over the world. I say that while there's an Amazon Alexa right there, probably listening to me. Making our way down the list, number 6, we have Winnie the Pooh. Everyone loves that honey-loving, crop-top wearing cuddly bear. But sorry, this theory is going to change the way you look at everything. So theory goes that every character in Winnie the Pooh suffers from a different mental illness. Let's start with Pooh. He suffers from compulsive eating disorder and OCD. For starters, he is obsessed with honey, he dreams about it, and eats far too much of it. Then we see that he has a habit of repetitive counting. That's his OCD. Then we have Piglet, which represents a generalized anxiety disorder. Piglet is always worrying and even has an anxious ear twitch. Eeyore is clearly depression. Don't need to explain that one, you can clearly tell that he's depressed. Owl is dyslexia because he has trouble reading, and also narcissism since he often thinks he is wiser than others. Kanga has social anxiety disorder, which is why she's so overprotective of her son. Tigger has ADHD, which is why he's bouncing everywhere all the time. And Christopher Robin, well, he has schizophrenia and imagines all of his friends. His friends appear depending on what state he's in. For example, if he's more anxious, then Piglet will appear. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the incest. Okay, this next theory is going to change the way you look at this film forever. So, Lion King. We all know that Simba and Nala end up together and have kids. Here's the thing. In real life, in a lion pride, you have one male lion that sleeps with all the female lions. So Simba and Nala might have different moms, but Mufasa might just be both their dads, meaning they're half siblings. Woo, yikes. Which makes sense why Scar hated his brother so much and wanted to overthrow him. It's because he was the loser brother that didn't get any. Then when Simba takes his place as king of Pride Rock, well, he won't be loyal to Nala. He's gonna be getting it on with all the other lady lions. In fact, this was one of Disney's concerns. In the original draft of The Lion King, it was implied that Nala's father was in fact Mufasa, but that was cut out to avoid the incest. But still. Making our way down the list at number 4, we have the hallucinations. Let's move on and take a look at Alice in Wonderland, shall we? Whether we look at the book or the Disney movie adaptation, it seems like the theme of drug use is always apparent. This theory states that Alice is a drug addict that would go on crazy trips. In fact, it is said that the author Lewis Carroll was an opium user. It was rumored that he was on drugs while writing this book. So in the Disney movie, we have the caterpillar that is constantly taking hits from his pipe. We have Alice who drinks potions and eats mushrooms and other edibles that have different effects on her body, quite literally, and the whole movie is filled with crazy characters and events. So the White Rabbit is the alias that her drug dealer goes by. He says, "I'm late for an important date," meaning he's gotta be on time for all these drug exchanges. The theme of madness present throughout the film highlights how dangerous the effects of drugs can have on you and how it can cause you to spiral into madness. In our third spot, we have the diversion. So I'm sure most of you have heard about the urban legend surrounding Walt Disney, that he was cryogenically frozen waiting to be brought back to life one day. His body is supposedly stored somewhere in Disney World. Well, theory goes that the movie Frozen was created as a diversion. Nowadays, when you Google search Disney's Frozen, only the movie pops up. But before the movie came out, if you typed Disney Frozen, the legend about Walt Disney being frozen would pop up. So now theory goes that Frozen was created so people would stop reading about this legend. Maybe because it isn't a legend and it's actually true. Walt Disney was frozen and will be brought back to life soon. Actually, probably not soon. Just wait till all of this mess is figured out. And then you can come back, Walt. Moving on to number 2, we have the experiments. So Reddit user Fan Theory Spoiler created this theory, and now it's got me rethinking everything. If it's true, then Disney Pixar is dark. So in Monsters Inc. we find out that Randall and Waternoose have been experimenting on kids. In one scene we see them capture Boo and try to experiment on her before being stopped. But this Reddit user believes that they have been experimenting on Boo for years. Here's the evidence. So first off, when Sully meets Boo for the first time, she isn't in bed like the other kids. She's fully dressed, which is weird considering it's the middle of the night. It seems like Boo knew what was going to happen and was prepping for it. And then we have the scene where Sully and Boo chase after Randall to go save Mike. Randall turns a corner and disappears. Sully tries to figure out where he went, whereas Boo just flicks a tool that opens up a secret panel, as if she knew it from before, from being there before. Now, how long has Randall been doing this? Well, at the end of the movie, we find out that Rox has been undercover for 2.5 years. So one can assume it's been that long. Poor Boo. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Mourning. Ever notice how a lot of characters in Disney movies are lacking mothers? Bambi's mom gets killed, and Belle, Ariel, and Jasmine, and many other Disney princesses and characters don't have mothers. Why is this? Well, theory goes that this is due to the fact that Walt Disney was still mourning over the loss of his own mother. She died from asphyxiation from a gas leak from her furnace. Walt felt responsible for the death of his mother because this incident occurred in the house Walt bought for his parents. He felt so guilty that he couldn't even bring himself to put mother figures in his own movies. That is so sad. Starting off this countdown, we have the Mermaid Killer. So I'm gonna get straight to the point. Captain Hook is a murderer. It's thought that Captain Hook killed Ariel's mom. So in the third Little Mermaid movie, we find out that Ariel's mom is killed by pirates. Now if we look at Peter Pan, the movie features a red-headed mermaid that looks an awful lot like Ariel and her mom. Not only that, but in Peter Pan, the mermaids were scared of Captain Hook and his crew, probably because one of their mer-pals got killed by them before, and Ariel's mom suffered the same fate. That's also probably why King Triton is so scared of humans, because they're the ones that took his wife away from him. In our 9th spot, we have the secret villain. According to this next theory, the real villain of Toy Story 2 is none other than Wheezy the Penguin. Yeah, that's right. In the movie, Woody finds Wheezy all dusty and alone on Andy's bookshelf. For years, he had been severely neglected by Andy, all because he has a broken squeaker. As a result, he became very jealous of all the other toys that Andy loved to play with, especially Woody. Therefore, Wheezy decided to include himself in the yard sale, knowing that Woody would try and come to his rescue and hopefully be sold in the process. It was his scheme all along to try to get rid of his competition and become Andy's #1 favorite toy. In our 8th spot, we have the Planet of the Lions. Of course, I'm referring to Lion King. So, theory goes that Lion King takes place in a Planet of the Apes type world. Animals are now the dominant species that have taken over the world. This happened when humans started testing drugs on the animals. This ended up increasing their intelligence, just like in the movie The Planet of the Apes. Then over time, these advanced animals gave birth to more advanced animals, and well, it continued on until they took over the world. Moving on to number 7, we have Grumpy. Ever wonder why all the dwarves in Snow White are upbeat and happy? All except one, Grumpy? Why is he so grumpy? Obviously he wasn't just born and was like goo goo gaga, I hate people. No, something must have happened. In fact, in the show Once Upon a Time, they made it so Grumpy was once called Dreamy. After losing his lover, he became sour and his name changed to Grumpy. So maybe this is the case. His lover passed away in a tragic accident and it completely changed his life. He now has trust issues and doesn't want to get too close to people as he fears they too will be ripped away from him. So he has his guards up and avoids making personal connections with others. Grumpy just doesn't want to get his heart broken again. Moving on to number 6, we have the prediction. It's crazy how life as we know it changed right before our eyes. Like in a flash, the virus was just spreading worldwide and we got locked down. Nothing could have prepared us for this. A warning would have been nice. But it may just be that Disney knew exactly what was going to happen to us. The movie Tangled is said to have predicted this outbreak. So in the film, Rapunzel is locked away in a tower with her mother. The town Rapunzel is isolated from is literally named Corona. So it's thought that the town of Corona represents the pandemic, and Rapunzel symbolizes everyone having to self-isolate. First the Simpsons are predicting the future, and now Disney? We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with The Purge. This one has got to be one of my personal favorites, just because of how outrageous and hilarious it is. So we all know the movie High School Musical. I mean, it's a movie that defined my childhood. To this day, I still have every single song memorized, and yes, I brag about that, okay? Those songs are everything. Anyway, this theory suggests that High School Musical and The Purge exist in the same universe. I know, but how else can you explain how the students get away with trashing the cafeteria, or how Lava Springs in the second movie didn't get shut down, or how Miss Darbus got away with forgery by applying to Juilliard on behalf of Troy? Seriously, none of their actions have consequences. You know where else you can get away with anything? On the Purge night once a year. Just saying. In our 4th spot, we have Edna Mold. By far, one of my favorite Disney characters ever. Like, she's such a sassy genius, but she's also a cold-blooded killer. Yep. So in the film, we see that Edna is so opposed to capes. Why? Because tons of superheroes have died from wearing capes. She names Thunderhead, Stratogale, Dino Guy, Splashdown, and others. All of them died tragically, having their capes caught on something and then dragged to their deaths. Well, theory goes that Edna was the suit designer for those superheroes, meaning that she is the one to blame for their deaths. That's why she's so against capes now. She has learned from her mistakes and refuses to ever make a super cape again. In fact, on the special features on The Incredibles DVD, you can see info cards on all the supers mentioned in the film. If we look at Stratogale, she was just a high school student trying to use her powers for good, but Edna's mistake cost her her life. She got sucked into a plane's turbine and got sliced to death. That's pretty dark. Coming in at number 3, we have the Illuminati numbers. What a lot of us may not have noticed is that in almost every Disney Pixar movie, they have the hidden code A113 in it. For example, In Toy Story, Andy's mother's car's license plate is A113. In Finding Nemo, the camera's model is A113. This code is also Mater's license plate in Cars, is seen on a box in A Bug's Life, and on a rat's ear in Ratatouille. It's also the code for the Abandoned Earth Protocol in WALL-E. So what is this code and what does it mean? Well, theory goes that it represents a secret Illuminati code. It's theorized that this code means something much darker than we realize. But in reality, A113 is the classroom number at the California Institute of Arts, the classroom where many animators at Pixar and Disney once worked. Or so that's what they want you to think. In our second spot, we have the Slayer. So in part 1 of this video series, I explained how Peter Pan is literally an angel of death. He escorts children to Neverland, which is basically a heaven. But this theory just got 10 times darker. So there's a new theory that Peter Pan has killed countless lost boys. I mean, if he keeps bringing kids to Neverland, you would think he would have tons of lost boys in his group. So now, let's take a look at what the author of Peter Pan had to say about his book. He said, and I quote, "The boys on the island vary of course in numbers, according as they get killed and so on. And when they seem to be growing up, which is against the rules, Peter thins them out." Excuse me? What did you say? Thins them out? Yeah, Peter Pan kills them once they start aging. He's literally a murderer. And in our number 1 spot, we have Mary POPPYWISE. People are getting more and more creative these days. Just wait till you hear this next theory. So posted on Reddit by the user HumanoidMold5, they believe that Mary Poppins and Pennywise the Clown from It are the same species. It's hard to believe, but there's some pretty solid evidence supporting it. So first off, both characters have the same power. They both manipulate young children's minds. Mary taps into their imagination, Pennywise manipulates them with their fears. Furthermore, both of them return after 20-something years to the same group of kids. In Mary Poppins Returns, she returns to the Banks family, and in Pennywise, he returns back to the Loser Club. Then we have the fact that both the Banks family and the Loser Club forget about them. The Banks family remembers Mary Poppins, but not that she's magical. The Loser Club forget their childhoods almost altogether, until Pennywise returns. And last but not least, we have the balloons. Obviously Pennywise has his signature red balloons, and he has the saying, "You'll float too." In Mary Poppins Returns, the characters grab balloons and float into the air. Coincidence? I think not. Mary Poppins and Pennywise are related. Starting off this countdown, we have the murderer. In Wreck-It Ralph, we learn that Calhoun, voiced by Jane Lynch, is the way that she is because of her programmed tragic backstory. Basically, on Calhoun's wedding day, a cybug burst into the church and ate her husband. Calhoun defends herself and her wedding guests by shooting the cybug. But what we eventually learn is that cybugs turn into whatever they eat, meaning it would have turned into her husband, meaning Calhoun shot and killed her own husband. The cybugs aren't to blame for this one. Calhoun viciously murdered her husband. Unintentionally, that is. Or was it? In our 9th spot, we have Aladdin. Now this is a popular theory, so you might have heard it already. But theory goes that Aladdin takes place 10,000 years in a post-apocalyptic future. There's actually quite a lot of evidence to support this. For starters, when Genie comes out of the lamp, he said he's been in there for 10,000 years. Yet he's making modern day references, like doing an impression of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jack Nicholson, meaning he must have been around during that time if he knows who they are. But then 10,000 years has passed, meaning it's 10,000 years in the future. But the world doesn't look so advanced besides magic carpets. So it's thought an apocalypse wiped out humanity. What happened exactly? Well, in an Aladdin video game, in one of the levels you can see an unexploded atomic bomb. So maybe a nuclear war wiped out humanity. Those that survived had to rebuild society. Coming in at number 8, we have the Mother Killer. In a very sad opening scene in Bambi, we see Bambi's mom get killed by a hunter. Well, fans have come up with the theory that Bambi's mom was killed by Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. For starters, we know he's a hunter. Then we have the fact that a deer is shown in the opening scene of Beauty and the Beast. Could that be Bambi's mom? And then shortly after, we see a deer's head that looks very similar to Bambi's mom mounted on the wall of the pub that Gaston drinks at. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe Gaston killed poor young Bambi's mom. In our 7th spot, we have the evil nanny. Mary Poppins may be a little stern at times, but she only has the best intentions, right? Or does she? According to this theory, Mary Poppins is the master at manipulation. She may seem practically perfect, but in reality, she is a cruel demigod that is trying to gain control of the entire human race. I mean, she definitely has superhuman capabilities, like, hello, her endless bag of stuff, or the fact that she can fly with an umbrella. Now, her plan begins by infiltrating families and getting them to conform to her ways. All the families end up blindly following her ways. We see that she has mass admirers and devoted followers. She is slowly but surely taking control over families so that they will always do what she says, and she can end up ruling the world with a loyal following. Making our way down the list, number 6, we have Beauty and the Beast. So at the end of Beauty and the Beast, spoiler alert I guess, even though you all should have seen this movie by now. But at the end of the movie, Belle's kiss and love turns the Beast and his workers back into humans. But what's weird is that in other films, you can see the Beast and his workers back to their original forms. Like in Mickey's Magical Christmas that came out after Beauty and the Beast. We see the Beast and Lumiere and Cogsworth back to their cursed forms. They're no longer humans. So theory goes that they got to become humans again for only a little bit before being changed back. Either this is because Belle is slowly falling out of love with the Beast, or because the Enchantress is truly evil and wants the Beast to be a beast forever. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Jack syndrome. Okay, this theory is really gonna throw you for a loop, and you gotta pay attention. So, in the first Incredibles, we see Syndrome dies after his cape gets sucked into a plane's turbine. But did he really die? I mean, the dude was a genius. His inventions were really out there. Who says that he didn't invent something to help him get out of that situation? Although it seemed like he died, maybe he's still alive. In fact, people think that Syndrome is a super himself. He just hasn't channeled his powers yet. So let's take a look at the supers mentioned on the Incredibles bonus CD. The super Psych Wave looks an awful lot like Syndrome. Like, they have the same color hair and their eyes are the same. It also shows that her intelligence level is the highest out of all supers. And her team owned a secret base on a remote island that now belongs to Syndrome. This can't all be a coincidence. Syndrome inherited his intelligence from his mother and some of her powers, but he doesn't know it yet. But while his cape was getting sucked into the turbine, that's when his powers got activated. It also says that Psych Wave has the power to possess another person's body. So what if, just as he was about to die, he possessed the closest person's body to him, Jack, meaning his physical body was destroyed, but now he became Jack. Soon, he will get revenge on the Incredibles. I know, it's complicated, but it kinda makes sense. In our 4th spot, we have the drug epidemic. So this next theory has to deal with the film Zootopia. So towards the end of the movie, warning, spoilers ahead, it is revealed that the assistant mayor, a white sheep, has been an evil mastermind all along. She has been infecting animal predators with a serum from night howlers, which makes them regain their predator instincts and become violent again. Well, people claim that this plot is very similar to the 1980s drug epidemic in America. Basically, there's a conspiracy saying that the CIA intentionally introduced cocaine into minority groups, mainly black neighborhoods. This was done to get people to turn against them in fear, stereotyping them as bad people. In the movie Zootopia, the predators are the minority. She introduces the drug into their groups, and she uses the predators' pre-existing stereotypes to then turn the population against them. Yeah, that's an eerie connection. In our 3rd spot, we have The Gruesome Murder. The Emperor's New Groove was actually a really good movie. Like, it deserves more attention. Like, Yzma and Kronk are an iconic duo. Now this theory shows how evil Yzma actually is. In fact, it's thought that Kuzco isn't the first human Yzma has turned into a creature. So in one of the scenes, Kuzco ends up wandering into a scary looking jungle. While doing so, he witnesses a fly trapped in a spider web. The fly says, "Help me," right before being viciously eaten by a spider. Well, isn't it quite weird that the fly had the ability to talk? I mean, Kuzco interacts with several other animals in the movie and none of them can talk, except this fly. So this has led people to believe that that fly was actually a human that Yzma then turned into a fly, meaning that that scene is much darker than we realized. It's the human's last moments of life. Coming in at number 2, we have The Little Patient. So let's take another look at the movie The Little Mermaid. In fact, it might not even be about a mermaid at all. It might really just be about a poor girl that suffers from schizophrenia. So theory goes that Ariel is not a mermaid at all. Instead, she's a patient at a mental hospital. Her sea friends, Flounder and Sebastian, are really just voices in her head. Meanwhile, she longs to be normal, aka part of the normal world. Ursula is really just Ariel's doctor that gives her some meds to stop the voices in her head. And Eric, well, he's just a nurse that Ariel becomes obsessed with. Now, Ariel's room has ocean wallpaper, which makes her believe that she's underwater and is a mermaid. Most of the stuff she experiences is all just made up in her head. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Angel of Death. This theory revolves around the film Peter Pan, Peter being the Angel of Death. Theory goes that Peter comes and takes the souls of dying children. He then takes their hand and guides them to heaven, aka Neverland. Now, this explains why the Lost Boys and other kids in Neverland don't grow up. It's because they are already dead, which is pretty sad if you ask me. This also means that Wendy commits a murder-suicide by killing herself and her brothers since they all go to Neverland with Peter. Now, author of Peter Pan J.M. Barrie created this land for his brother that passed away at 13. So the theory about Neverland being for dead kids is kind of true.